Summit, President Biden is sending the world a clear message. The United States is back and is ready to be a leader again in combating climate change. The White House Leaders Summit is meant to encourage countries to make strong commitments under the Paris Agreement to prevent the global average temperature from rising more than 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. This sounds technical and dry and wonky, but here's what it means. At 1.5 degrees Celsius of warming, much of the world will likely see sea level rise that swallows coastlines, leaves millions of homes underwater, and produces record-breaking droughts, floods, and other climate catastrophe. Hundreds of millions of people will be pushed into poverty because of this, and climate-related famine and conflicts would trigger a global refugee crisis worse than anything we've ever seen. That's the future if we do nothing. That is something we must avoid, and the United States needs to show leadership. President Biden does that today with this meeting. One of his first official acts as president on the first full day in office was starting the process of recommitting the United States to join every nation in the world in the Paris Agreement. If you'll remember, the previous president decided that America would step away from that. At the White House Leaders Summit, the president will announce a new goal to reduce U.S. greenhouse gas emissions by at least 50% by the year 2030. The Biden administration's leadership stands in sharp contrast to what we've seen over the last 4 years. We saw a president withdraw from the Paris Agreement, ridicule science at every opportunity, deny the existence of a growing climate threat, and even to censor the remarks of government scientists that might suggest otherwise. Fortunately, the disengagement by the previous administration didn't prevent the American people, scientists, real business leaders and entrepreneurs, cities and states from ignoring President Trump and moving ahead. There's no substitute, though, for leadership at the top. The American Jobs Plan, which President Biden plans to pass, and I hope to support, is a plan to preserve America's global economic leadership, strengthen America's working families, and build the infrastructure of the future we can count on. The American Jobs Plan, of course, will rebuild America's crumbling rail lines, roads, bridges, ports, water system, strengthen America's power grid, and invest in 5G broadband internet for every community in America. The previous president promised it, didn't deliver. This president wants to deliver with our help. And I've heard those on the floor who then criticize that part of the American Jobs Plan which goes further. The President Biden also wants to invest in green energy, wind, solar, and other renewable energy projects. To hear that described by some of his Republican critics, it's just pure socialism. Socialism? It's a realistic response to the 21st century challenge of climate change. He includes billions of dollars to retrain any workers who are dislocated if they work in the fossil fuel industry, and to find better, well-paying jobs with a future in clean energy and other fields. Just this week, the president of the United Mine Workers of America, a sixth-generation West Virginia coal miner, announced his union was going to support President Biden's American Jobs Plan in exchange for training his coal miners and how they can be effective and also have good jobs in a cleaner energy future. That union understands clean energy. Most Americans do. I hope senators on both sides of the aisle will. American business gets it. I've introduced 2 bills that would bring efficiency and innovation of the marketplace and the financial clout of the federal government to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and create a more sustainable economy that works for the people and the planet. My bills are called the America's Clean Future Fund Act and the Climate Change Resiliency Fund for America Act. We've talked about investing in American infrastructure so we can tackle climate change, create renewable energy jobs, and the industries of the future, But I want to make it clear, our highest priority is to create those jobs right here in America. I hope my colleagues will work with us and won't filibuster the President's efforts to move our economy forward in a dramatic way. We can't afford denial, defeatism. We can't afford people who say it's too late to do anything about the climate disaster. We owe it to our children, grandchildren, and future generations to do everything in our power to save this planet from what is obviously coming our way. Safe, effective vaccines have brought us so far in fighting this pandemic. We developed in the short period of time under this president not only the vaccines, but also their delivery and administration to the people of our country at a rate no one ever expected. The research that led to this was good scientific research. Technology was developed called messenger RNA, and it worked. The basic science that led to the discovery of mRNA was funded largely by American taxpayers, by government programs, and then applied to the private industry with great success. And now, because of our investment in science and belief in science, people's lives are being saved in the United States and around the world. Imagine what solutions we can find to harness the power of public-private partnerships together with science and citizen engagement to address climate change. The first Earth Day was 51 years ago. It was proposed by a senator from Wisconsin named Gaylord Nelson. It brought 20 million Americans together at the time, put preservation of our planet on the national agenda, and ushered in a decade of remarkable environmental progress. That decade saw the creation of some of our most important protections of clean air and water. 10 years later, Gaylord Nelson looked back on that first Earth Day and the decade that followed. His words bear repeating today, and this is what he said: "So long as the human species inhabits the earth, proper management of its resources will be the most fundamental issue we face. Our very survival will depend on whether or not we are able to preserve, protect, and defend our environment." Madam President, we're not free to decide about whether or not our environment matters. It does matter. Apart from politics, it is fundamental to survival. We disregard the needs of our ecosystem at our mortal peril. That was the lesson of Earth Day, and it should never be forgotten. Madam President, I ask that the following statement be placed as a separate part in a record. Madam President, this morning we're going to take up the COVID-19 Hate Crimes Act that Senator Hirono and Senator Duckworth bring before us. In the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic, we have unfortunately witnessed an appalling rise in hate incidents targeting the Asian American and Pacific Islander, or AAPI, community. The numbers are shocking. Between March 2020 and February 2021, the Stop AAPI Hate Initiative documented 3,800 hate incidents in the United States. And a recent analysis by the Center for the Study of Hate and Extremism found that while hate crimes in 16 of the American largest cities decreased overall by 7% in the year 2020, those targeting Asian Americans increased by nearly 150%. Our friends and neighbors in the AAPI community are facing an urgent, imminent threat. It's time to do something about it. That's why I'm proud to support the COVID-19 Hate Crimes Act introduced by Senators Hirono and Duckworth. This legislation will improve the Justice Department's response to this ongoing threat and provide state and local law enforcement with guidance and tools to track and address hate crimes and hate incidents. I'm grateful for the bipartisan support which Senator Collins and others have brought to this bill to strengthen it. These efforts include the addition of Senator Blumenthal, who just took the floor, and Senator Moran's Jabura Hire No Hate Act, critical legislation that will improve hate crime reporting and expand assistance and resources for victims of hate crime. There's so much more we can do and should do to address the broader issue of domestic terrorism, identified by the director of the FBI as one of the gravest threats to security in our country. That's why I introduced the Domestic Terrorism Prevention Act earlier this year and I will continue my efforts to send that legislation to the President's desk. Today, we have an opportunity to come together, Democrats and Republicans, Americans, and support our friends, our siblings, and our fellow Americans in the AAPI community. Millions of Americans count on us to do that. Let's show them that we can. Mr. President, I yield the floor.
Senator from Connecticut.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm honored to follow our distinguished Judiciary Committee Chairman and Whip, Senator